Are you a tired parent? I feel like this is just like the week before Christmas. This goes without saying. If you are a tired parent, if you feel like sometimes it's just, oh my gosh, like, is it really possible for me to go on? Is it really possible for me to do all the things, Lord, that you have set out for me to do? This seems impossible because I am so tired. I want to encourage you to listen closely to this podcast. I'm bringing on my beautiful friend, Debbie Cowden, to talk about her brand new book for tired parents. That is what's happening today on the Possibility Mom Live. I think tiredness can come from so many different places. So there's the tired that comes straight up from your body. So, like, we're talking just not sleeping enough, having an infant who is nursing throughout the night. Maybe you're electively staying up late because it's the only time that you get to yourself. Like, there's the physical kind of tiredness that truthfully you need to sleep and we need to have great sleep habits. There are some human beings who can exist on very, very limited sleep, but the majority of human beings need a solid, 7, 8 hours of sleep plus in order to function well. P.S. I've learned so much about sleep. Adults, kids can go without sleep. They get cranky, but they can function. Adults cannot. But then there's the kind of exhaustion that I believe is more mental and spiritual. And this mental exhaustion, which honestly just comes from like having many tabs open in your brain, it comes from choosing thoughts that lead to emotions that produce then a physical response, like a chemical response in the body. Think of like when you cry. You don't just cry, you have a thought that makes you feel sadness, which then triggers synapses in the brain that then produce those tears. You don't just like cry. It's not how the human body works. And then there is a spiritual exhaustion that I think is such an interesting one to unpack, that I believe comes from an absence of the sacraments, and I believe comes from an absence of hope, maybe. And I think all of these things are so important to unpack, especially as we are in this very interesting, I'm going to call it somewhat crunchy season approaching Christmas, where we've got school concerts and we've got end of year recitals and we've got the regular stuff that a mom thinks about prepping for Christmas, like gifts and meals and getting the house prepared. So I just thought that this was a perfect time to bring on the beautiful Debbie Cowden, who has written a book that I think can help us all. Debbie, welcome to the Possibility Mom Live. How are you?
Hello, Lisa. I'm very well. Thank you. And I'm so grateful to be with you today. This is such an important topic this time of year, like you said.
Yes, and I just want to also highlight the earrings that we are both wearing.
Yay! Beautiful.
Remind me the brand that you call this line of earrings.
It is Gigi's Earring Shop. Gigi is my 6-year-old daughter, and she and I make polymer clay earrings together. It started out just for fun, and then there were some things that she wanted to buy. And so I said, well, if you want them, then you have to earn them. And so she has just busted her tail. She's worked hard. She's learned so much about money and discipline and the process of making an item from start to finish, and even customer service. This past weekend, she attended a craft fair with me, and she got to have that one-on-one interaction with customers. It was so sweet. Other vendors wanted to hire her to sell this stuff because she was so great.
So I know a lot of my listeners will be familiar with who you are, but for anyone who is not, can you share a little bit about who you are and how you got here?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I'm Debbie Cowden, and I'm the Senior Digital Media Specialist for EWTN Global Catholic Network. It's the world's largest religious media network. It reaches over 150 countries, over almost 400 million television homes. It's on radio. We've got TV, print, news. We've got a new publishing arm now. EWTN is literally everywhere. And it's so cool that I grew up watching EWTN, and now I work for EWTN, and now I've literally written a book for EWTN, and just seeing the way that God has worked and he has provided for my family while we are part of Mother Angelica's mission. It's been amazing. And I'm so thankful for all of the opportunities that I've had through EWTN, and also the way that my faith has grown, because I don't know that I would be Catholic in the same way were it not for EWTN.
And your media career got started in a really fun way. Tell us that story. How did you get started in front of the camera?
Well, I studied television in college. First, I started radio because somebody told me that I had a face for radio. So I started in radio, realized that I really had an interest in television. And so while I was in school studying TV and video production, I got involved with a local PBS station. And I was the executive producer of one of their TV shows, president of their student media organization. I anchored a news show and started a political show it was during an election year, and really got a chance to learn what was going on behind the scenes with all of the production technology, field production. And then as part of that, naturally, I was able to do some hosting and some anchoring. And I thought that that's what I wanted to do, so much so that I had an internship at a huge network in Florida, and then also one of the world's largest media networks in Times Square, where I had an internship for a summer. And that's where I wanted to be when I graduated. And so much so that I had started applying for jobs. I was making connections to get set up with a job. And then at the same time, my faith was starting to become more important to me. I had not necessarily fallen away in college, but I was about a step or two above lukewarm. And through the grace of God, and as I was meeting Dave and starting to date the man who now is my husband, my faith started to take a priority. And so I applied at EWTN thinking that I was going to be a producer from here on out for the rest of my career. And I was for the first 3 years that I worked there. But with the birth of my first child, right before my first child was born, actually, I realized that I probably was not going to be able to be a series producer anymore, even though I really enjoyed producing TV series, producing live shows. Like there's nothing like that energy and that adrenaline rush of a live show happening like right now. And also getting to direct live events from the Vatican. That was what I thought that I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden I not found myself. I became pregnant with our first child and realized that that was going to have to change. And that my career and my participation in Mother Angelica's mission of EWTN was going to change. And again, through the grace of God and through the way that he had provided for me, there was a position available in communications and at EWTN, and I was able to take that role. I was able to work from home part-time as my husband was getting his doctorate. So God really provided for us. And I got to see how I was still able to use the skills and the gifts that God had given me. I was still able to use my television training, and I was still able to do something important even though, or as part of my role as a mother of my child. And so from there, God has been, again, so good. He always is good, and he is generous, and he loves us. And now I've moved from Alabama, where EWTN is located, to Ohio, where Dave's family is from. We're really close to his family. I've got 3 kids. I'm continuing to work full-time from home. We've now written a book. We are doing a whole home renovation. We've got our own little business endeavors happening. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot of peace in our home. And I praise God for that.
I mean, we could do a whole other podcast interview around what that looks like for you. And in fact, we totally should, because I think it's really interesting. I came from a secular television background, right, where I saw all of it. I was on camera and I was also behind the scenes. And it was, we worked around the clock. Like it was a really intense career. Hence why I found a different way to work. But I just love what you share, that you were able to find a different way to still utilize your television training and make it look really different. That's a whole other podcast. But what I really want to talk about today is your brand new book. You have written a beautiful book, and I'm going to bring it up onto the screen. It's called The Prayer Book for Tired Parents: Practical Ways to Grow in Love of God and Get Your Family to Heaven. And in the description, I really love what you say here that, parents expect to lose sleep, saving serenity, but many don't anticipate how their spiritual lives will be impacted by the birth of a child. So tell us, why did you write this book?
Well, I never wanted to write a book. And my husband didn't want to write one either. We never felt like there was something really that we had deserved or earned the right to talk about. And this was really just an inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And once we got that inspiration, because just jokingly, I had said, well, really the only thing that I know how to do is be a tired parent. And it was like, that's it. And again, I didn't want to write a book. And so it went by the wayside for a while, but it was always nagging at me. And when I would talk to Dave and we would say, oh, well, if we were going to write a book, here's what's going to be in the book. And it just was falling into place perfectly. So then I said, okay, Jesus, listen, if you want this book to happen, then you are going to have to blow open all the doors, because I am not going to fight for this. Because again, raising 3 kids, working full time. My husband works in healthcare. And by the way, this was all happening during COVID, after my husband, who works in healthcare, had been furloughed. And all of this is happening. And God just rolled out the red carpet. And he was like, thou shalt not put the Lord thy God to the test. We're going to make this happen. And just the process of writing the book wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. The most difficult part was just making the time to be able to sit down and write, because again, 3 kids, full-time job, husband's got a full-time job, home renovation. And also there was a major traumatic event in our life that had happened that literally left us homeless. And that really gave us a chance to put the tired parent title to the test. And God gave us a lot of opportunities for suffering during that time. And he gave us a lot of opportunities to practice the points that we make in the book about abandonment and about trust and about feeling like you're at your absolute lowest and on the borderline of despair. Because in the months that we had started writing the book, it was like once we got the contract signed, everything hit the fan. Our neighbor's house caught on fire and burned down and almost took ours with it. And so I'm standing across the street looking at my neighbor's house and realizing how close the flames are to my house and just thinking, my house is going to catch on fire today. And am I okay with that? I guess it would give me some good things to write about. But then we were not allowed back in our home because of the smoke contamination and the property damage, our property damage. And living out of a hotel with 3 kids while you're both working full time and trying to keep them occupied during the day is awful. We lost our nanny. She didn't want to watch 3 kids in a hotel room. And it really brought us again to our lowest point. And so when you're reading the prayer book for tired parents, just know that we know what it's like to be tired. We know what it's like to be at your breaking point. And there were some times where we went beyond our breaking point and we went into that period of darkness and in borderline despair, like, God, how could you let this happen to us? And we came out on the other side, and we're so happy to tell people about it too, because God has been good and he has been generous and he has been loving on us the entire time. So when people read the prayer book for tired parents, we're understanding that it is difficult to raise children, and it is really difficult to raise holy children. But we offer some concrete steps and some practical ways to lay that foundation of faith and to reorient your life so that you're making God the priority. Because one of the biggest things that we realized in our own exploration of our faith and our own diving into, okay, our prayer life is different now, what are we going to do about it, is that we were just going through the motions for a long time. It's really easy to do with Catholicism because it's like, get to Mass on Sunday, pray the rosary every once in a while, do the Catholic feasts. But there's more to it than that. And we were missing out on that critical element, which is loving God. And if you're truly going to love God, and if you realize that there are 2 options for your faith, it can either mean everything or it can mean nothing. And if it really does mean everything, it's going to change the way you live your life. And so with this book, we help parents and we walk them through what it means to change your life, to prioritize God, and how to make holiness a possibility in
Mm.
your family. And as a student of the women's school with January Donovan, we've realized that there's so much goodness that comes. There's so much benefit from writing out a plan and taking your dreams, doing an exploration of your dreams and your desires, and making an action plan for how that's going to happen. So it's funny that I was actually going through the women's school as we were writing the book as well, and that practicing your faith, it requires a skill set. You've got to manage your time so that you can get to daily mass, so you can go to adoration, so you can carve out that schedule for how you're going to pray together as a family, how you're going to approach your joys and sufferings in life. And we help pave the way for that to happen for you. We also offer a lot of prayers and reflections on the saints that you can find in the back of the book. And we've got this really great section in the back where, if you like the prayers that you're reading in the book, we've got them in the back. Let me try to make this so you can, so you can cut them out and you can put them around your house. Because again, we want those reminders of our faith, and we want to be in a position where we can pray often.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of this book. I'm really thankful for the way that God has just held our hands through the whole process. And I just want to share it with everybody.
I love that you talk about skill, because it is something that I believe, in my experience coaching hundreds and hundreds of Catholic and non-Catholic women, but I really want to talk about Catholic women. It can be lacking because it is a skill to figure out how to pray. Like, it is a skill to figure out when you can make time in your week for confession. It's a skill to figure out how to strategically get out the door for mass without feeling super frazzled by the time you're there. Like, all of these things are skills. And I'm so, I'm grateful that the women's school has been something helpful to you. It's been something I've journeyed with hundreds of women in, and currently continue to offer it as part of my Motherhood Without Guilt coaching experience. But I want to talk about, this is a skill. Like, what I'm about to say is a skill, but it is also a it is also in the mindset training space. And that is, how do you love the Lord when it is hard? So I've been very open sharing about the things that have been hard in my life lately. I had a pretty big business disappointment sort of earlier this year, and then of course I've lost my my first child to miscarriage. I've never experienced a miscarriage before, and that's more recent. And I've included a link below in the notes here for a very tender webinar I did. I want to encourage people, if you're curious what it looks like for me to love the Lord when it's hard, I've shared a couple things, very tenderly there. But Debbie, when your house was, like, when you were watching your neighbor's house burn and you're standing outside and you're like, literally, like, I don't know, you must have had many thoughts, and I don't want to put those thoughts in your head, but maybe like that process, and also in the hotel room when you lost your nanny, I'm sure you had like thoughts that were not pleasant. How do you love the Lord when you sometimes feel abandoned, or you feel like it's a Job-like moment where you're like, Lord, where are you? How do you love the Lord when it's really hard?
For us, it comes down to one word, and that word is obedience. And I believe one of the root words in obedience is listen, to listen. And so for us, well, first of all, when you had lost your baby very recently, we've talked before about how the hymn of that time for you was "O God, beyond all praising," and how one of those lines is, "Whether our tomorrows be filled with good or ill, we'll triumph through our sorrows and rise to bless you still, to marvel at your beauty and glory in your ways, and make a joyful duty our sacrifice of praise." And that was my wedding hymn, or our wedding processional hymn. So it's always been one of my favorites, and I cry every time I hear it. And that was the theme of that season of our life. That was the hymn: to make a joyful duty our sacrifice of praise, and to triumph through our sorrows. And that comes through obedience. And there aren't always going to be times where we love God the way we should. And there aren't always going to be times where we pray the way we should. And there are going to be times where we grumble through what's happening to us. And there was one point where it was the day that we were supposed to be moving back into our home. It was St. Teresa's feast day. We had been praying a novena beforehand because they were telling us, you know, you might get back in, you might not. We thought that we were going to be ready before then, but there were some issues with the way that they had to decontaminate our entire house. And that seems great. Like a whole cleaning crew is going to come in and clean your house from top to bottom. And that sounds great until you realize that practically speaking, that's very, very difficult for them to do after a fire. But it was St. Teresa's feast day. It was a Friday. We're getting ready to move back into our home. We hadn't even gotten through the door, and we had gotten hit with a devastating blow. And it involved one of our children and her health. And it was something that was completely out of control, but something that ended up resulting in a cascade of really awful interventions, like requiring the state and requiring like all of this. It was just an absolute disaster. And so I remember I was going to mass that night with my daughter, the one who had this horrific health issue. And I was just sitting in the back pew crying the entire mass. And the quote that came to my mind was St. Teresa of Avila, after she had experienced a blow, and she looks up at Jesus and she says, Lord, if this is how you treat your friends, no wonder you have so few of them. But we were obedient, and we knew that there must be a reason that this was happening to us. And it's different when you're on the other side, because in the moment, it's really difficult. And in the moment, you just ask yourself, why? Like, God, don't I already have enough going on? I have goosebumps all over. But God, isn't there already enough? Like, why something else? Don't you know that I'm already trying and you're making this even more difficult? But our life has been completely changed by this fire and by everything that has come about because of it. We're still not done dealing with this stuff. And the fire was almost 1.5 years ago. But the obedience and knowing that God loves you and he's taking care of you and that this is for your good, that mindset allows you to be open to God's graces, because you can say, I mean, there are a lot of things that I cannot control in life. I can't control my neighbor's house catching on fire. I can't control the bed bugs that infested the Airbnb that we then moved to after a month of misery in a hotel. We can't control like the timeline necessarily for when we can get back into our home. We can't control the speed by which the insurance companies handle the claims. There's a lot that we can't control, but there is a lot that we can. And with that mindset training and with those scripts that we give ourselves and that we repeat over and over and over again out of obedience, even when it's tough, and when your scripts become more of a prayer, that's how you get through it. And you know that God's not ever going to abandon you. Now, it does require our trust. It does require us to stay in a state of grace and to receive the sacraments faithfully, to be going to confession, to be receiving Holy Communion as frequently as possible. But he gives you the ability and the intellect to be able to change the way that you think so that you can grow in your trust of him, so that you can open your eyes to be able to see the ways that he's showing you he loves you. It gives you the opportunity to be grateful. Yeah, I could go on and on and on.
I want to pause you right there because it's really important. And this is why I love what you have in the back of the book, because I think a big part for me and for many, when we can be reminded, that's been what my spiritual director truly, because like this has been just like an epically challenging year for me, and I honestly feel like I'm on like repeat with my spiritual director, like just like literally I could just press play. Here is how I'm struggling, it's the same literally, and he says the same thing back. Like in a lot of ways he could just press play on the repeat back, and it is always to recall all the ways that the Lord loves you, has shown his love, has gotten you out of hard things in the past. I talk about this a lot with couples who come to me for advice for mental illness in their marriage. Like when somebody gets that kind of a diagnosis in their marriage in the beginning, it can feel like, I imagine, similar to a medical diagnosis like you went through with your child, where you're just like, what is our life going to look like? All of these unknowns. And I say this a lot to these couples. Just, can we recall how many times the Lord has shown up for you in your life? And part of the practical things, Debbie, and I love how you have this in your book, is things like that. Tear out those pages in Debbie's book. Put them next to the coffee table, coffee maker. Put them on your bathroom mirror. Say the litany of humility over and over and over again. Have these reminders so that when we are tempted, because here's the thing, I think too, and I'm sure you can relate to this because you're a tired parent. When we're tired, our mental faculties can sometimes just naturally lapse. Like when we are sleep deprived, they do this on purpose. Sleep deprivation is a form of torture. We can become less mentally strong. And so these little things around the house, these practices that of recalling are just so vitally important. Okay, so what is an essential to you, Debbie, recalling habit? Like, what's one way in your life when you are down in the dumps or when you're tempted to go like there is no more hope, where you're almost instantly pulled back to that place of there is hope and I can go on? What's like one thing for you?
You know, I I have a lot of pictures and videos in my phone, and I will scroll back and I will look at those good times. And
Oh,
what I've also found is I know because I have started taking pictures and videos of pretty much everything, because sometimes with that sleep deprivation, I'm not always in the best mindset to appreciate what is happening as it's happening. But then when I have the chance to look back at those pictures and those videos and recall those moments, I recognize that they're a lot more meaningful than what I even thought at the moment. And I am able to reflect then and say, you know, not to sound trite, not to discount the suffering that I'm going through. I could have it a lot worse though. And I
mhm.
have it a lot better than I imagined, because even with the fire, we were immediately able to get into an extended stay hotel, and we were able to have a hot breakfast every morning. And granted, it got kind of old after a while because, you know, it's hotel breakfast and
Yes,
it's
yes, yes.
something every day. But for those first few days, at least, my kids were so excited to go down and eat the breakfast. And with the hotel that we were staying at, we were able to get all of the points for staying in a hotel for 30 days. So now we're Hilton Diamond members, and that has some perks too. Now we get a water bottle and a snack with every hotel that we stay in. But we had a hot shower, we
Mhm.
had food, we were able to pull some of the essential stuff out of our home, because when the house caught on fire, I was home with just our baby, and I walked out of our house, saw my neighbor being dragged out of the house by a first responder and a police officer. And so I had nothing but my phone and my baby in a diaper. I didn't even have shoes on. And I walked across the street and I realized, like, I didn't grab my computer. I didn't grab the house keys. I didn't grab the rosary that's right by the door, because I was just in shock. But my neighbors lost literally everything. And in walking with them, because we were dear friends with them, and walking with them as all of this is happening, I realized that it could have been worse, and that things are hard enough as they are right now, but things are also so good. And that for everything that we lost with the fire, because it was a lot of damage, and it was very costly to us in more ways than one. But it could have been a lot worse. And so even when we're not feeling like we have a lot to be thankful for, that's when it's really important to push yourself to look for those things to be thankful for. And one other thing that I do now that our kids have started picking up on is just throughout the day, especially when things are getting a little bit tricky, we find something to be thankful for in the moment. So my kids are having a meltdown. My son in particular, if he just needs a hug, then I will hold him and I will say, I'm so thankful that you're my little boy. You are my favorite little boy. He's my only son, but he is my favorite little boy. And I'm so thankful for your sweet smile. And I'm so thankful for your hugs. And I've recognized too that when he gets sad, he'll say things like, I'm thankful for the playground. And so now he's learning that he can be thankful for something even when he's feeling so bad. So, and even when we don't feel like it, we have, Dave and I wrote what's called the Litany of the Tired Parent. And one of the prayers that you repeat over and over again is, Jesus, grant me the grace to desire it. And I would be happy to send that to you if you want to share it with your moms. But the Litany of the Tired Parent is just, it's beautiful, because we're asking for We're asking for the will to be faithful and the will to be patient, the will to be charitable, the will to be generous, the will to grow in love of God. And we don't always feel like it, but we're just praying that God will grant us the grace to desire it.
In the prayer book for tired parents, you talk about saints that we can find connection with. Who has been particularly helpful to you, Debbie, in this season?
Saint Therese. Our family loves Saint Therese. I got my Saint Therese medal on right now. One of the easiest ways that I feel like I can relate to Saint Therese is actually through her parents, particularly Saint Zélie. And Saint Zélie was a work from home mom. She was a busy mama. She was a businesswoman, and she and Saint Louis raised 5 little girls to be saints.
Mm-hmm.
But before they got to the point of sainthood, there were some trials that they had faced along the way. And one of those is with Therese's temperament. She would have big temper tantrums, big meltdowns. And in some of her letters that Zélie had written to Louis while he was away, she would say that, this little Therese throws herself on the floor, despairing as though all is lost. And that little 3-year-old Therese grew up to become one of the greatest saints in our church's history. So much so, she became a doctor of the church. And so in the moment when my child is having a meltdown, and my temptation may be to yell or to spank or to take things away or just to lose my cool, I can remember Saint Therese in that moment. And so we have a reflection on that in the prayer book for tired parents, as well as a prayer to pray for the parent and also for the child, so that we can remember in that moment that this is when saints are made, and not just the child, but also the parent, because I'm praying for the grace to be patient and the grace to be gentle and the grace to keep my composure. And so that's one of my favorite reflections. And then having that quick prayer that you can pray, Jesus, help me love my child in this moment, and help me remember that this child is a gift and I'm to be a good steward of that gift. It's easier said than done, but in the moment, it's so helpful. I'm remembering my child needs me to love like the Father loves. But we've got others too. We've got a reflection on Saint Lawrence, who was he was burned at the stake, and as he was being martyred, he was literally being grilled alive. And just in that moment of like the last moment of his life, his Christian joy, he says, "Turn me over. I'm done on this side." And I think that's I know you got to be in the right audience to be able to tell them that. But sometimes in those moments, like, there is nothing else that I can do in this moment. And so if I can just offer up a quick prayer when everything is going up in flames, that brings a lot of peace. To just say, God, I don't necessarily have control of this moment, but I know that you do. And I'm just asking for the grace to get through this moment when everything is going up in flames. And there are others too, like there's a prayer in Thanksgiving for coffee. And that one's based on recognizing our dependence on God and our need for God even more so than our need for coffee. We've got a prayer for the healing of family rifts, a prayer for the grace to forgive. There's a prayer for a couple that's suffering from infertility. There's a prayer reflection on Saint Dymphna, and a prayer for the family that is enduring mental illness. A prayer for family illness, or like health issues, with a reflection on Saint Peregrine. And there's a bunch of them. There's over 30 prayers that are uniquely tailored to parents, just so they can flip through the book and they can say, I'm struggling with this. There's Saint Jose Maria Escriva and the prayer for the person who sanctifies you. Like in this moment, because he says, don't say this person irritates me. Say this person sanctifies me. That's another way you change your mindset on how you're interacting with people. Instead of recognizing this or saying this person is a nuisance, or like, oh, I got to deal with this person again. This person is sanctifying you. This person is helping you grow in virtue. And when you change your mindset about that, it changes everything. You recognize every encounter with every person is an opportunity to get a little bit holier. But yeah, I want you to be able to open this book and just say, I need help with this, point to it, and be able to find the prayer that is associated with it.
I love it so much. I want to encourage everybody to go and grab a copy, the prayer book for tired parents, Practical Ways to Grow in Love of God and Get Your Family to Heaven by Dave and Debbie Cowden. Debbie, it is always a joy to spend time with you. I hope we get to do a lot more of it in 2023 and beyond. Where can people go to learn more about you and your brand new book?
I would love for people to go to tiredcatholicparents.com. When you go to tiredcatholicparents.com, you'll not only get a link where you can purchase our book, but if you're interested in buying a bunch of copies, say to share with your parish, with your school, your Sunday school, homeschool group, Bible study, you'll be able to inquire about the special rate that we have for buying multiple copies of the book. We're also building a blog or a set of posts that are helpful for parents with those specific seasonal things. You'll get to know the Cowdens a little better. We also have a library of videos where you can watch past interviews that we've done and learn even more about the book before you decide that you definitely want it. But it's tiredcatholicparents.com.
I love it. Debbie, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me. I'm so excited to continue to use your book as a guide in my life, and I want to encourage everybody to go check it out. Thank you, Debbie, so much.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for your time. This has been wonderful.
Oh, it's so my pleasure. Everybody, here's where I really just I shared this in my tender webinar this week, and I want to share it with all of you right here. And that is, what is the alternative? I know there are people, I know you're listening or you're watching this because you tell me. I have the gift of having people open up to me in my DMs. Every Monday on my Day in the Life Mondays, I share a little opportunity where you can, my spiritual director, speaking of obedience, my spiritual director gave me this task every Monday. I want you to ask your audience how you can pray for them. So every single Monday, you fill that little box with the things that are really hard. And I'm talking hard. I'm talking infidelity in marriage. I'm talking porn addiction and mental illness. I'm talking cancer diagnoses and children who are ill and loss of children. I'm talking all the things. It's a lot. I know there's a lot. And it can be so tempting and almost seem like there's no other option. Like hope. Like hope is not an option. Like it's just not. It can be so tempting to think that. But what happens when you follow the trajectory of that thought? Like, what's the alternative? Like, what happens when you think that way? We go to despair. We eat a bunch of potato chips. Maybe we do more things that are not helpful for us and actually could be very harmful for our sanctity. We get into bad habits, etc., etc., etc. So that is one trajectory we can go. That is one alternative ending, so to speak, to your story. Or we can choose another alternative. And this other alternative, even if it is just like a little bit farther, you know what I mean? If you picture like a fork in the road, and like, even if it's just like 10 degrees, 10 degrees parallel to the original road you were going to get down of despair, despondency, discouragement. I believe even that 10-degree shift of believing that something else is possible, believing I can get out of this hole, believing that there is hope for me, for my marriage, for my family, whatever it is. But what this can require is people to remind you of who you really are. People and support and training. It's a skill to be able to say, I'm going to have the courage to shift over here, this 10-degree shift. It's a skill to be able to say, I could probably go eat the potato chips, but instead I'm going to choose to go sit in front of the tabernacle for a little while, even though it might be the last thing I want to do. So if you're looking for more support and encouragement in this area, I'm so excited to share with you. I've been dropping hints over the last couple of weeks that there is a brand new way that you can work with me. And that is in the Motherhood Without Guilt Academy and the Wealth Without Guilt Academy. If you are new to me here, you might know, or sorry, if you're new to me here, you might not know, but my two areas of focus are helping moms love their life in their motherhood and helping moms love their business and pursue all of these things without guilt. And I have long wanted to provide an opportunity where people can work with me at a more accessible price point because I heard all of you. I have been on calls with probably hundreds of women who have shared with me, I would love to work with a coach like you who is Catholic, who understands the reality of raising children, who does it all in a way that is totally in line with my Catholic worldview. But I just simply do not have $2,000 at this point in time to work with you. And so I'm so excited to share with you that the Motherhood Without Guilt Academy, which gets you access to my signature trainings on marriage, on home, on motherhood, and more, is all available to you at a founding members price of just $49 a month. Before the end of the year, you can lock in this price and get access to me as your coach live once a month in a group setting. You're going to get access to my digital library of training and resources to help you love your life and your motherhood more, to help you when it's so difficult to make that shift, to make that choice. So I want to invite you to check out the Motherhood Without Guilt Academy. You can also learn about Motherhood Without Guilt group coaching, which includes the woman's school content that Debbie was sharing earlier. And you can also check out the Wealth Without Guilt Academy, which is like basically like going to business school. But again, at this reasonable, in my humble opinion, price of $49, where honestly, I believe if you were to invest just this $49, you would get that return by employing the things that you will learn inside of the academy. And then I also have a coaching option where you get access to me live, and you can learn about all of that in the link right below this video. It is my joy, to be honest, to do this work and to do it alongside you, because the thoughts that Debbie and I talked about today, doing the hard, being obedient, they don't go away. I hate to break it to anybody. This is a very challenging thing that I've had to really learn, that you don't kind of like hit this like mountaintop of, oh, okay, now you've like organized your life. I hate to break it. There is always a new summit to climb because this was never meant to be our permanent residency. We're on this journey towards our ultimate destination, and the preparation for that simply does not end while we are here on earth. But what if this journey, dare I say, could be fun? What if this journey could be an adventure? And what if this growth in intimacy, while yes, like heartbreaking and sometimes just feels so arduous that we can't go on, what if it is full of hope? Because that is the truth. And so, if you're looking for some reminders, if you're looking for people to journey with at the exact same time, I invite you to take a look at the Motherhood Without Guilt Academy and the Wealth Without Guilt Academy and the coaching experiences that come alongside that. You can lock in your founding members price by the end of the year. And I want to invite you, link arms with me. It would be so much fun. Thank you, everybody, for joining me on the Possibility Mom Live. I hope that this is the kind of podcast you put in your earbuds when you are feeling like it is hopeless, because hope never disappoints. Until next time.